There's a reason most people don't become great. A reason most people live far below their potential, stuck in cycles, addicted to ease, constantly searching for shortcuts. It's because the hard path, the one that demands more from you, the one that requires discomfort, effort, endurance, that path looks painful. That path looks uncertain. That path looks lonely, and it is. But that path is also where power is born. Doing what's hard is not a punishment. It's a pathway. It's the sharpening stone that forges every quality required to be unstoppable. Grit, discipline, focus, mental toughness, patience, resilience. These are not traits you're born with. They're built, and they're only built through adversity, through doing what's hard when everything in you wants to quit. Most people avoid that path. They live by feelings. They move when it's easy. They show up when it's convenient. They follow their mood instead of their mission. They take the path of least resistance. And because of that, they build a life of minimal reward. Not because they're incapable, but because they never trained themselves to endure. But the few, the rare, the ones who step into challenge on purpose, who seek it out, who pursue the hard thing, not because they enjoy pain, but because they understand what's on the other side of it. Those are the people who become dangerous, not to others, to their own limitations. They become the kind of person who cannot be stopped, who does not fold, who does not flinch, who does not need to feel ready to move. And the truth is, that kind of strength is available to you. Not someday. Not when you've read a few more books or gained a little more confidence. It's available the moment you stop running. The moment you decide that the hard road is the only road that leads to the life you want. Because the hard road builds different. It doesn't just develop your skill, it transforms your identity. You stop being someone who dips a toe in and start being someone who shows up. You stop being someone who talks about potential and start being someone who delivers results. You stop being someone who waits for the mood and start being someone who moves regardless. This is not about perfection. It's about pursuit. It's about chasing growth with such intensity that ease becomes boring to you, that comfort becomes a red flag, that resistance becomes a signal to lean in, not pull away. Because every time you do what's hard, you get stronger, sharper, wiser, hungrier. And that shift makes you dangerous. Because now, no one can stop you. Not your past, not your fear, not your circumstances. You've trained yourself to keep going. You've learned to get up when it would be easier to stay down. You've decided that who you become is more important than what you feel. And once that becomes who you are, everything in your life begins to change. Not because the world changes, but because you've changed. Because you stopped negotiating with your limits. Because you stopped looking for the easy way and started becoming the kind of person who doesn't need it. The reason doing what's hard changes you is because it forces you to confront the truth. The truth about your habits, the truth about your patterns, the truth about your priorities, the truth about what you've been tolerating. Most people avoid hard things because they don't want to face that truth. They don't want to feel exposed. They don't want to acknowledge that they've been coasting, hiding, settling, avoiding. But the truth has a way of showing up whether you invite it or not. And when you choose hard things, you choose to meet it on your terms. You step into discomfort willingly. You take ownership of your growth. You stop running and start refining. Because on the other side of resistance is clarity. On the other side of struggle is strength. On the other side of discomfort is a new version of you, one that only reveals itself when the pressure is high. No one becomes great by avoiding adversity. No one becomes powerful by dodging pressure. No one becomes elite by coasting. Greatness is earned in the fire, in the dark, in the repetition, in the refusal to quit. It's not just about talent. It's not just about being smart. It's about being relentless. It's about doing what's required when everything in you wants to do what's easy. This is the first real separation, because most people don't want to suffer. They want progress without pressure. They want growth without effort. They want confidence without action. But that's not how it works. You earn self-respect through repetition. You earn belief by proving to yourself that you're the kind of person who shows up even when it's hard. That's where real confidence comes from. Not compliments, not outcomes, not temporary hype. Real confidence is forged in discipline, in sacrifice, in waking up and doing the work again and again and again, until the voice of doubt gets quieter and the voice of certainty gets stronger. And in the beginning, that's hard, because your identity is still shifting. You still remember the version of yourself who quit, who made excuses, who negotiated. And every time you step into something difficult, that version wants to pull you back. It whispers, it's too much. You're not ready. This isn't working. But if you keep going, if you do the hard thing anyway, something begins to change. You stop listening. You stop hesitating. You stop entertaining the voice of the old you. And the longer you hold the line, the more distance you put between who you were and who you're becoming. You build evidence, you build experience, you build a new standard. And over time, you stop needing motivation. You stop needing approval. You stop needing to feel good to follow through. You just do the work. You just show up. You just execute. Because now doing hard things is not something you dread. It's something you expect. It's what you're built for. That shift in expectation is everything. Most people approach hard things with resistance. They dread it. They stall. They procrastinate. And even when they show up, they're not really there. They're half in, half out. Still negotiating. Still hoping it gets easier. But you have to train yourself to run toward resistance, to stop seeing effort as punishment, to stop seeing pressure as danger, to stop seeing discomfort as something to be avoided. That starts with awareness. You catch the moments when you're pulling away. You catch the moments when you're shrinking. You catch the moments when you start reaching for comfort and you interrupt it. You pause, you breathe, and you remind yourself, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. This tension, it's working. This pain, it's building something. This challenge, it's shaping me. You stop trying to escape it and you step into it. Because you've chosen a different path now. You've decided that success is not about being comfortable, it's about being capable. And the only way to increase your capacity is to carry more weight. Not once, not occasionally, but every day. And that's what separates people who are unstoppable from people who are inconsistent. They do hard things daily, on purpose, not just when life forces them to, not just when they're backed into a corner, but because they know that staying sharp requires friction. And they've stopped waiting for permission to feel uncomfortable. You want to become someone others can count on? Someone who delivers under pressure? someone who never cracks when it matters most, start doing hard things on your own time. Train it, build it, stack it. Show yourself that you can suffer intentionally and grow through it. You stop resenting the process. You start respecting it. You start seeking it. You understand that every rep, every setback, every delay, every rejection is just more weight on the bar. And the more weight you move, the stronger you get. And when you train this way, life changes. Not because the world gets easier, but because you get harder. You get stronger. You stop falling apart when things break. You stop folding when you're tired. You stop crumbling when it's not fair. You rise, you adapt, you endure, because you've trained for it. When you make the decision to do what is hard, not once, but daily, you begin to train your nervous system to stop interpreting challenge as a threat. You begin to teach your brain that resistance doesn't mean danger. It means growth. And the longer you stay in that space, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, what used to break you now builds you. What used to scare you now sharpens you. What used to overwhelm you now fuels you. But that transition doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design. You have to create friction on purpose. You have to schedule discomfort into your life. Because if you don't build hard things into your day, life will eventually force you into hard things unprepared. And when that happens, the people who've been practicing pressure win. The people who've been training in peace perform under fire. This is where structure becomes your ally. Because doing hard things doesn't mean living in chaos. It means creating a system where challenge is part of your rhythm, where it's built into your morning, your routine, your practice, where it's no longer a surprise, it's a standard. You don't wake up wondering if today's going to be difficult. You expect it. And because you expect it, you prepare for it. You plan for it. You face it, not with fear, but with readiness. That's how warriors live. Not panicked by the battle, but built for it, because they trained for it before it arrived. So you build your own battlefield. You build discipline into your day. You decide what the non-negotiables are, physically, mentally, emotionally, and you hit them. Not when you feel like it, every day, especially when you don't feel like it, because that's when the reps count the most. You move your body. You control your inputs. You limit your distractions. You sharpen your focus. You protect your mornings. You review your habits. You ask hard questions. You face the parts of yourself you used to avoid, not because it's fun, but because it's necessary. Because you've made the choice to live as a builder, not a consumer, a creator, not a complainer. And as you do this, people will notice something. You're calmer under pressure. You're less reactive. You don't complain. You don't make excuses. You don't shrink in conflict. And it's not because you don't feel discomfort. It's because you've trained through it. You've been here before. You've done the reps. You've lived in the fire so long that the heat no longer phases you. That kind of presence is rare. That kind of composure is earned. And it's only earned by the people who've chosen to suffer when they didn't have to. The ones who did the extra rep when no one was watching. The ones who stayed in the gym late, who rewrote the chapter again, who sat in the silence, who said no to distraction, who got up early, who went again when it would have been easy to call it a day. That's the work that matters. Not the big moments, the quiet ones, the ones that don't show up on social media, the ones that don't get you praise, the ones that only you know about, because those are the moments where you either reinforce your strength or your weakness. where you either say, this is who I am, or you say, this is too hard. And over time, those moments compound. They stack. They build a version of you that no longer needs to fake confidence. Because now, it's not ego. It's earned. It's not hype. It's history. It's not theory. It's practice. You know who you are because you've paid the price to become that person. That's when you become unstoppable. Not because life gets easier, but because you've stopped needing it to be easy. You've accepted that the hard path is the only one worth walking. You've stopped asking, when will this be over? And started asking, how far can I go? Because now you're not doing hard things just to check boxes. You're doing them because they're changing you, because they're building qualities in you that nothing else can, because they're teaching you how to lead yourself and eventually how to lead others. And that's the next level, leadership. You cannot lead anyone else if you cannot first lead yourself. You cannot demand discipline from others if you haven't mastered it privately. You cannot ask for excellence publicly if you haven't practiced it when no one is around. People don't follow words. They follow standards. They follow actions. They follow consistency. And when you become the kind of person who consistently does what is hard, your life starts speaking louder than anything you say. Your presence changes rooms. Your name carries weight. Not because of charisma, but because of credibility. Credibility built in the gym, in the study, at the table, on the run, in the cold, in the quiet. Credibility that comes from being battle-tested. That's what the hard path gives you. That's what ease can never produce. And here's the most powerful truth of all. The hard path becomes joyful. Not at first, not when your mind is still wired for comfort, but over time, when the pain becomes normal, when the resistance becomes expected, when the effort becomes your baseline, you start to love it. Because now, effort is freedom. Discomfort is direction. The fire is where you feel most alive. You stop asking, how do I get out of this? And start saying, let's go deeper. Because now you understand. Everything you want lives inside the very thing you've been avoiding. And when you learn to want what others avoid, you unlock a life that others will never access. Doing what's hard doesn't just transform your outcomes. It transforms your relationship with pressure. Because pressure isn't going away. No matter how much you grow, no matter how skilled you become, no matter how successful you get, pressure scales with you. The problems get bigger. The stakes get higher. The decisions get heavier. And if you haven't trained to stay calm under that weight, it will break you when it matters most. But when you choose hard things daily, when you intentionally put yourself under strain, you stop seeing pressure as something to avoid. You start seeing it as fuel. You learn how to breathe through it. You learn how to think inside it. You learn how to lead in the middle of it. And that skill becomes one of your greatest assets. Because people follow strength, not noise, not emotion, not hype. They follow the person who keeps their head when everyone else is panicking. The person who moves with certainty when the path is uncertain. The person who doesn't flinch when the pressure is on. That's who you become when you train yourself to do hard things. You stop seeing adversity as something to survive. You start seeing it as something to master. Because now your system has been conditioned to operate under load. You don't need calm conditions to execute. You don't need a perfect environment to stay focused. You've trained your mind to remain dangerous, regardless of what's happening around you. That kind of conditioning separates people at the highest level, because success is not about who shines when things are easy. It's about who rises when things break, who leads when plans fall apart, who executes when emotions spike. That kind of composure is rare, but it's trainable. You train it by running toward discomfort. You train it by choosing confrontation when you'd rather avoid it, by speaking the truth when it would be easier to stay quiet, by facing the facts when the lie feels more comfortable. Because truth isn't always easy, but it's always required. And the more you live by that principle, the stronger you become. Because now, you're not just building physical strength, you're building mental strength, emotional strength, the kind of strength that holds the line when most people fold, the kind of strength that doesn't need circumstances to be perfect, the kind of strength that does what needs to be done, period. This is where most people crack. They don't lack talent. They don't lack skill. They lack emotional endurance. They haven't trained their nervous system to stay calm under pressure. They haven't practiced resilience when the emotions spike. So when stress hits, they panic. When it gets hard, they disappear. But the people who train themselves to stay inside the fire, they thrive. They operate with clarity while others are overwhelmed. They make decisions under stress while others freeze. They stay consistent while others collapse. That's not luck. That's not personality. That's training. And you build that training with small decisions. Every day, you do the reps, not just in the gym, but in your life. You push through resistance. You delay gratification. You have hard conversations. You stretch your limits. You stop avoiding the uncomfortable and start using it. Because pressure is not something to be managed. It's something to be used. You leverage it. You lean into it. You stop trying to escape it, and you start building strength inside it. And when you do that consistently, your identity shifts. You stop seeing yourself as someone who hopes they can handle it and start seeing yourself as someone who's built for it. That shift is subtle, but everything changes once it happens. Because when you believe you're built for pressure, you stop resisting it. You stop doubting yourself. You stop hoping for the easy route. You step into the challenge and say, this is where I do my best work. And when that becomes your expectation, your baseline, life doesn't have to get easier. You just get stronger. Your resilience gets deeper. Your bounce back gets faster. Your tolerance for discomfort expands. Your emotional bandwidth increases. Now, the very things that used to derail you don't even faze you. And people will notice, not because you're loud, but because you're solid, because you're stable, because you don't react, you respond, because your presence is calm, but your work is fierce, because you don't explain, you execute. That presence is not born from natural temperament. It's born from consistent exposure to adversity, followed by consistent action anyway. And the beauty of that strength, it travels with you into every conversation, every negotiation, every decision, every season of uncertainty. You become someone people lean on, not because you have all the answers, but because you're not afraid of the pressure. And that alone makes you different. Most people crumble when things get hard. You're different. You've trained for this. You don't run from challenge. You don't negotiate with fear. You meet resistance with discipline. You meet difficulty with clarity. And you don't wait to be rescued. You lead. Doing what is hard doesn't just build strength. It builds integrity. Because when you consistently choose the path of resistance, you remove the space between who you say you are and how you actually live. You close the gap. You stop pretending. You stop talking. You start living in alignment. And that alignment becomes your anchor. The truth is, most people are out of alignment. They talk about discipline, but they don't follow through. They talk about standards, but they bend them. They talk about values, but they compromise them under pressure. And that misalignment eats away at them, quietly, slowly, day by day. It drains confidence. It weakens self-respect. It keeps them stuck. But when you live in alignment, when your actions match your principles, you feel strong even on the days when the results aren't visible. Because you know the foundation is being built. You know the structure is being reinforced. And that's a power most people will never feel. Doing the hard thing, even when it's inconvenient, is how you earn your own respect. And once you respect yourself, your life changes. You stop seeking validation. You stop asking for permission. You stop needing applause because you know the work you're doing. You know what it costs. And you know who you're becoming because of it. And that kind of self-respect doesn't fade. It doesn't crash when things go wrong. It doesn't evaporate when the world doesn't notice, because it was never built on the world. It was built in private, in silence, in the moments when you could have taken the easy way, but didn't. You don't need to broadcast it. You just need to live it, because the way you live speaks louder than anything you say. And when your life starts speaking from that place of earned respect, people feel it. You walk differently. You speak differently. You lead differently. Not from ego, but from truth. And truth is what makes you powerful. Because when you live from truth, you stop being afraid. You stop overthinking. You stop second-guessing yourself. You become clear, focused, intentional, unshakable. That's what the hard road gives you, not just results, but truth. The truth about who you are, the truth about what you're capable of, the truth about what you've overcome, the truth about what matters. Most people live disconnected from that truth. They stay numb, distracted, numb to pain, numb to purpose, numb to potential. But pain has a way of waking you up, and purpose lives on the other side of pain. So you stop running from it, you stop numbing it, you stop wishing it away. You lean into it, you look at it, you ask, what is this trying to teach me? And the answers that come back, those are the lessons that shape your character. Not in theory, in reality, in action, in how you move. You don't need more information. You need more courage. You don't need another strategy. You need more commitment. You don't need another motivational speech. You need more consistency. And all of that is built through choosing the hard thing again and again and again. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens over time through hundreds of small choices. The second alarm that you don't snooze, the extra rep you push through, the phone you ignore, the hour of work you do when no one's watching, the one more day you keep showing up when it feels like nothing is working. And eventually, those small choices become identity. Not the kind you talk about, the kind you embody, the kind that doesn't need to be explained. Because when you walk in integrity, you don't need to prove anything. You just keep moving, quiet, steady, consistent. And that consistency builds compound power. It starts to shift how people see you. But more importantly, it shifts how you see yourself. You begin to see someone who finishes, someone who pushes, someone who stays when others quit, someone who rises when others stall. And once you see yourself that way, you don't go back. You can't go back. Because now you've seen what's possible. Now you've felt what it's like to live without excuses. Now you know what you're made of, and that knowing becomes your edge. That's what the hard path gives you. Not just growth, not just strength, but clarity, integrity, alignment, identity. The kind of identity that doesn't bend, that doesn't beg, that doesn't need to be convinced to keep going, because it's already decided. Doing what is hard doesn't just shape who you are in the moment. It defines your trajectory. It's the difference between people who grow for a season and people who grow for life. It's the difference between someone who peaks early and someone who keeps rising. Because the hard path doesn't just build performance, it builds sustainability. When you condition yourself to do what's hard, you're not just preparing for this week or this year. You're preparing for a future that requires more from you. Because as your life expands, as your goals evolve, the challenges don't shrink, they grow. And if you don't evolve ahead of them, you'll get crushed when they arrive. This is what most people miss. They're always waiting until things get hard to toughen up. But by then it's too late. If you only train in comfort, you're not prepared for crisis. If you only move when it's convenient, you're not ready when it's critical. You have to build the habit of leading yourself long before the world demands it. That means choosing the difficult conversation before resentment builds. It means making the investment before it's safe. It means taking the leap before you're ready. It means doing the uncomfortable thing before the stakes are high. And every time you do that, you expand your tolerance for pressure. You stretch your capacity. You build a foundation so deep that when the storm hits, you're not just surviving, you're leading. While others are scrambling, you're grounded. While others are retreating, you're advancing. That's what hard things give you. Roots, stability, depth, a kind of strength that can't be taken from you because you earned it, because you built it, because no one can give it to you and no one can take it away. And when you build that strength, something even more powerful happens. You stop being afraid of struggle. You stop being afraid of pain. You stop being afraid of failure. Because now you know you can endure it. Not just endure it. You can use it. That's the final shift. From avoiding hard things to using them. From being intimidated by resistance to being fueled by it. From shrinking under pressure to standing taller because of it. When life throws weight on your shoulders, you don't panic. You don't stall. You rise. You adjust. You carry it. Because this isn't new to you. You've been doing the work. You've been sharpening the blade. You've been showing up long before anyone else noticed. And while others look for relief, you look for responsibility. Not because you like pain, but because you understand what it produces: growth, freedom, fulfillment, self-respect. All of it is born from struggle. And once you understand that, you no longer need life to be easy. You just need it to be yours. So you stop outsourcing your power. You stop blaming your past. You stop waiting for the timing to be right. You take responsibility for the weight on your shoulders, and you move forward. And you don't move casually. You move decisively, with clarity, with commitment, with fire. That's how unstoppable people move. They don't need certainty. They don't need applause. They don't need guarantees. They just need the mission, the reason, the standard. And once they have that, they show up. Period. They build the discipline to finish, the resilience to recover, the humility to keep learning, the awareness to stay grounded, the edge to keep pushing, the confidence to trust the process, even when the process feels brutal. And that's what this is really about. Becoming someone who doesn't stop, who doesn't lower the bar, who doesn't wait for the easy way, who moves with conviction because they've chosen the narrow path, the path of purpose, of principle, of pressure, and they know what it leads to. Because it doesn't just lead to success, it leads to becoming, to mastery, to strength that can't be faked, to peace that can't be shaken, to a kind of confidence that isn't loud, but undeniable. You want to become unstoppable? Do what is hard every day, not just when you feel like it, not just when it's convenient, not just when the conditions are perfect, but especially when it's inconvenient, especially when you're tired, especially when no one is watching. That's when it counts. That's when identity is forged. That's when you separate yourself, not because you're more talented, but because you're more consistent. Not because you have more resources, but because you've stopped making excuses. Not because your path is easier, but because you've stopped needing it to be. You've chosen the hard way, not for the sake of pain, but for the sake of power. The kind of power that can't be taken from you. The kind of power that doesn't disappear when life gets messy. The kind of power that lets you walk into any room, face any challenge, and lead, because you've already led yourself. And that's the edge, the real edge, not skill, not charm, not strategy, but discipline, hunger, endurance, the ability to suffer on purpose, to move when it's dark, to keep going when there's no guarantee. That's what makes you dangerous. That's what makes you unstoppable. So you stop looking for motivation. You stop waiting for permission. You stop explaining why you haven't started yet. You just begin. You train. You suffer. You grow. You rise. And you keep rising, long after others have given up. Not because you're better, but because you're committed. This is your invitation, not to be perfect, but to be relentless. Not to have it all figured out, but to refuse to quit. Not to get it all right, but to stay in the fight. You don't have to be the best. You just have to be the one who never backs down, the one who never breaks, the one who shows up again and again and again. Do what is hard, not once, not when it's convenient, but until it becomes who you are, until resistance feels like home, until challenge feels like a calling, until you can't imagine living any other way. Because that's how you change your life. That's how you rewrite your story. That's how you build a legacy, one hard choice at a time, one disciplined decision at a time, one courageous act at a time, over and over and over again. And when you live that way, when you stop chasing comfort and start chasing growth, you don't just become better. You become unbreakable. You become unshakable. You become unstoppable.